who's back? It's another math episode from Mr. Mac. Alright. So on task 1, first thing we're going to do is change the following mixed numbers to improper fractions. So this is in preparation for test 2. So the first thing we're going to do is just take a look over here and look at what we want to do in order to change these mixed numbers into an improper fraction. So we want to multiply the whole number, alright, times the denominator, and that's 4 times 3, we get 12. Alright, after that we want to add the numerator to the product. So since I got 12, alright, the numerator is the number on top. We're going to add that to that number 12. 12 plus 2 gives us 14. And then lastly, we take the denominator of the improper fraction, and it's going to be the same. So we're going to keep that number 3, and our final answer is going to be 14 over 3. So that's number 1. All right, so now we're going to do the same exact thing, but just a little bit quicker for letter B and letter C. 11 times 4 is 44. 44 plus 1 gives me 45, and I'm going to keep the same denominator as 4. And for letter C, I want you to treat this negative sign as if it's not there, and we're going to remember to multiply by the negative sign last. So 6 times 5 is 30. 30 plus 4 is 34. Then we're left with 34. We keep the denominator of 5, and we multiply it, aka we negate it. Alright, so that's it for question number 1. Now let's move on to question number 2. So for question number 2, we're going to change the following improper fractions into mixed numbers. Okay? So in order to do that, the first thing we want to do is divide the numerator by the denominator. So I want to ask myself, how many times does 5 divide into 13? 5 divides into 13 a total of 2 whole times. Once I've done that, I write down the whole number part of the quotient. Awesome. Now I need to take the remainder and write it over the original denominator. So 5 times 2 gives us a product of 10, and 10 is 3 units away from 13. So I keep that remainder of 3, and I keep the denominator of 5. So again, 5 divides into 13 2 whole times. It leaves a remainder of 3, because 13 minus 10 gives us 3. So that remainder is 3, which goes in the numerator, and we keep the denominator as 5. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing for the next 2. 7 divides into 32 4 times. It leaves us a remainder of 4, and we keep the denominator of 7. And lastly, 4 divides into 15 3 times. We leave a remainder of 3, keep the denominator of 4, and we can't forget we need to multiply it by a negative. All done with question number 2. Number 3, add, subtract, multiply, divide. So for letter A and B will be our adding, subtracting questions. And basically for these questions, what we're going to be doing is when adding or subtracting fractions with different denominators, we need to first find the LCD, also known as the least common denominator. Once we do that, we're able to convert the fractions to equivalent fractions with those denominators. Alright, so let's take a look. We have 2/5 plus negative 1/3. So the first thing that stands out to me is a case of double signs. We have a positive times a negative. Anytime two signs are next to each other, we can combine them by multiplication. So a positive sign times a negative sign leaves us with a negative. So the new question we're now going to be left with is 2/5 minus 1/3. Now personally, I'm just going to write this vertically just so it's a little bit easier. Now that we've written it vertically, we now need to find that least common denominator. Now if you feel like you struggle with multiplication, what I definitely recommend is list out the multiples of your numbers, starting with the biggest numbers. So right now we're dealing with multiples of 3 and the multiples of 5. I'm going to start with my biggest number because for me that's normally easiest. Alright, I asked myself, can 3 evenly divide into 5? No. Can 3 evenly divide into 10? No. Can 3 evenly divide into 15? And the answer is yes, because basically if I did 3 times 2, I'd get 6. 3 times 3, I'd get 9. 3 times 4, I'd get 12. And then lastly, 3 times 5, I see that they share either common factor of 15, and that's the smallest number that both of them evenly divide into. All right, so now let's move on to the next step. So this is the part where we convert them into these equivalent fractions. Since we saw that 15 will be their least common denominator, all right, what we like to do at this point is now multiply the number in your denominator by a number that will give you the 15 in our denominator. So 3 times 5 gives me 15. If I multiply my denominator by 5, I need to do the same with my numerator to then get 1 times 5, which gives us 5. Can't forget that we're doing subtraction. Over here, 5 times what will give me 15? If you're not sure, you divide. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So I multiply the bottom by 3, I multiply the top by 3, and I end up with 6 over 15. 6 over 15 minus 5 over 15 leaves us with a difference of 1 over 15. And that's it for letter B. All right, same process for the next question. Negative 5 3/8 minus 7/12. All right, before I go crazy, all right, I realize that they do not have the same denominator. But even yet, this number right over here is a mixed number. So I'm going to convert it into an improper fraction as we did earlier, where we do 5 times 8, which gives us 40, plus 3, which gives us 43 over 8, and we multiply it by our negative sign. And I'm going to bring down the minus 7 over 12. We want to find a common multiple, least common multiple that both of these numbers can divide evenly into. So again, we have our 8, we have our 12. 12 times 1, 8 does not evenly divide into that. But when I have 12 times 2, that gives us a product of 24. Now, luckily, I know 18 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3, I'm sorry, I meant to say 8 times. And 8 times 3 is 24. So that right there will be our common factor. Okay? Again, I love writing it vertically, so I'm just going to rewrite it vertically and begin again. Now we have our common denominator of 24. And we want to divide both of our denominators by the first denominator. So 24 divided by 8 is 3. So I multiply the bottom by 3 and the top by 3. And once I do that, I end up getting negative 129 as my numerator. And over here, 24 divided by 12 gives us 2. So I multiply the top and the bottom by 2, and I get negative 14. All right, so when I find the difference between both values, I end up getting negative 143 all over 24. And as we did earlier, when we convert, we divide 24 divided into negative 43 gives us negative 5 and 23 over 24. And that's it. On to letter C. Question letter C deals with multiplication. We have negative 4, I'm going to put it over 1 just so it can look like a fraction, times 6 over 13. So when we do this, we can go ahead and multiply our numerators, then multiply our denominators, and if necessary, we can convert our improper fraction to a mixed number. So let's go ahead. Negative 4 times 6 gives us negative 24. 1 times 13 gives us 13. And now when I want to convert this into an mixed number, 13 divides into 24 one full time with a remainder of 11. Keep our denominator of 13. Now don't forget, since it was negative, we can't forget that negative sign. All right, now on to letter D. This question consists of dividing. All right, we have a mixed number divided by another mixed number. So to make it a little bit easier for ourselves, let's take these two mixed numbers and turn them into improper fractions. 2 times 4 gives us 8, and 8 plus 3 gives us 11, and we keep it over the denominator of 4. Keep my division side here. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 plus 4 gives us 9. Keep my denominator of 5, and there goes my negative sign. Now, anytime you're dividing fractions, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. All right, don't get in the habit of always saying the keep, change, flip. Yes, it is a keep, change, flip, but mathematically, we refer to this as multiplying a number by its reciprocal to get the quotient. All right, so we're going to keep that 11 over 4. All right, and we do this by the opposite of division, which is multiplication. And the reciprocal is when you turn your fraction over, all right, or as some of you refer to it as flipping, 5 over 9, and we keep that negative sign. All right, so when I multiply, we end up getting negative 55 over 36. All right. Now with that, we can convert it into a mixed number. 36 divides into 55 one time with a remainder of 19, and we keep that 36. But don't forget, since it was negative, we multiply it by that negative. That's it. One more question, number 4. Number 4, illustrate the following expressions on the given number lines and identify the number on which they fall. Alright, so anytime we're starting these number lines, we always want to start from 0. Okay, so for instance, we're going to start from the number 0. Alright, and from that number 0, we're going to then travel to the first number that's in our expression, which is the number negative 3. Alright, we just cap it there. So we travel to the first number in the expression. Now, what we're going to be doing is adding. Whenever we're adding, we will be going units to the right. When we're subtracting, we'll be going units to the left. Since we're going to be adding 3, alright, the one thing I realized when I first looked at the question is that each tick mark is increasing by 1. So if I'm adding 3 units, starting from where I initially started, alright, or left off, I should say. So negative 3 plus 1, 2, 3 leaves us right here to give us a final answer of 0. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do that again. But in letter B, the main difference is that there are mixed numbers. So we're going to turn these mixed numbers into an improper fraction. Alright, I always like to look at how many tick marks are between each number. So over here I see there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. So that lets me know that each of these are broken up into fourths. Alright, meaning that this would be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4 where 1 is. That's always very important to look at before you start graphing. So our first one, as we always said, it always starts at 0, and we're going to stem off to 4 and one more tick, and that will be known as 1/4. Alright, now what I recommend, if you're having a hard time trying to figure out where to go back to, convert this second number here into a improper fraction. Alright, that turns into negative 23 over 4, and that lets us know we need to go back 23/4. Okay, so all you really have to do is just count how far 23/4 is. Alright, and I like personally doing that on the bottom right over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And that's let me know where I'm going to be bringing down my next arrow to. Right over there at negative 1.5. Okay, so our final answer is negative 1.5, or negative 1 2/4. Now on to letter C, same exact process. Started off with this blue line going from 0 to negative 2 1/3 because I realized each tick is increasing by 1/3 each time. Now I'm going to be adding 3 2/3, but if you're having trouble doing so, convert this into an improper fraction and we get 11 over 3. Since it's a plus 11 over 3, we're going over 11/3. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Alright, and we end up ending at 1 1/3. So my final answer is equivalent to 1 1/3, also known as 4/3 if you received that. That is correct. And that's it for task 1.